Now what we want to end up with is that x equals. So at the moment, this plus 3 is stopping that x being on its own. So what we do is we take it across to the other side. And when we take it across that equal sign, it becomes a minus 3. So it now is 5 minus 3, which we know equals 2. And if we check it, we get that 2 plus 3 does indeed equal 5. So that's your answer. So again, in order to find what 1x equals, well, what have we done to this side? We've had to divide by 2. And remember, whatever we do to one side, we must do to the other. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So to do 2x plus 7 equals 47, the first thing we need to do is get these x's by themselves. So we need to get rid of that plus 7 by putting it on the other side. Now hopefully we now know that when we put it on the other side, it becomes a minus. So it's now minus 7. So 47 minus 7 is 40. And what's left on the other side is just that 2x. So then we've got that 2x equals 40. Therefore 1x equals, well, what have we done to this side? Divide by 2. So remember, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other to get 20. So just like the one above, what we need to do first is get these x's on their own. So we get rid of this plus 18. When we put it on the other side, it becomes minus 18. Because remember, we changed that positive into a negative. So 48, take away 18, leaves us 30. And left on this side is just the 5x, because this has been taken away. So then we got that 5x equals 30. So to get 1x, remember we divide this time by 5. So we must divide this side by 5 to give us 6. So the last one of grade 4 here. So again, what we're going to want to do is get this 3x by itself. So we need to get rid of this minus 12. Again, we put it on the other side. Now this time, remember, we always change that sign. So it becomes plus 12 this time. So now we get 18 plus 12, which is 30. So 3x equals 30, because that's all that's left on that side. So therefore, to get 1x, well, we divide that side by 3. Therefore, we must divide this side by 3. So x equals 10. So what we must do first of all is expand this bracket. So I've drawn in the lines already, and remember, along those lines, we have to times. So when we do 2 times x, we get 2x. And 2 times 3 is 6. So that equals 18, because that just stays the same. And now, just like before, we want to get our x's on one side and our numbers on the other. So we move that across. So we've now got 18 minus 6, which is 12. And left on this side is just that 2x. Therefore, if 2x equals 12, 1x must equal 6, because we divide both sides. To move the smallest x, so we've either got the 2x, so the 6x or the 2x, we're going to take the smallest x over to that other side. So remember, at the moment, this is a plus 2x. So when we take it over, it becomes a minus 2x. So then we get 6x minus 2x, 4x. We've still got that minus 12. And now that equals just 16, because we've got rid of this 2x. We've got rid of it. Now, just like the other ones, we're going to move that minus 12 onto this side. And remember, it becomes a plus when we take it across the equals sign. So 16 plus 12 is 28. So 4x equals 28. So So 1x equals 7. So this is our smallest x. So we're going to move it on to that side. So it becomes at minus 5x. So we get 10x minus this 5x gives us 5x. That plus 50 stays the same. And then all that's left on this side, we've got rid of that. So all that's left is that 25. And now we're going to want to move this 50 onto this side. So it becomes a minus 50. So be careful here because now we're going to go into negative numbers because we're going to do 25 take away 50, which is minus 25. So we get that 5x equals minus 25. So 1x equals minus 5 because we divide both sides by 5. So our first step is putting all of our x's on one side and the numbers on the other. So we're going to move the smallest x, which in this case is this 4x, and we're going to move it on to there. Remember, when we move it across, it becomes a minus 4x. So we get 5x minus 4x, which is 1x. That plus 6 just stays the same for now. And all that's left on this side is the 10. So our last step is to move this plus 6 onto the other side. Remember, when we move it across, we do the opposite of this sign. So we're going to opposite that sign, so it's a minus. 10 minus 6 is 4, and all that's left is x. First thing we're going to do is expand this bracket. Now remember, along these lines, we times. So we do 3 times 2x, which is 6x. And then we do 3 times minus 1, which is minus 3. And then we just leave the other side the same. Now, again, just like before, we need to get our x's on one side and our numbers on the other. So we're going to move this x over to here. So it becomes a minus 5x. So now we've got 6x minus 5x, which is just 1x. That minus 3 stays the same, and all that's left on the other side is the 2 because we've got rid of that 5. Now what we do is we add 3 to both sides to move this across, so we get that x equals 5. So in order to solve this, the first thing we're going to have to do is factorise because we need to find what x is. So in order to factorise, we know it's going to go into 2 brackets because there's nothing that goes into all 3 of those terms. Therefore, hopefully we know that the 2 numbers that we find have to add to get 8 and times to get 15. Because they times to get a positive and add to get a positive, both numbers must be positive. X goes at the beginning, and hopefully we'll know that those 2 numbers are 5 and 3. So then what we do is we have to work out what x actually is. Now remember, we're timesing, because in the middle here is a times. We're timesing to get 0. So the only way we can times to get 0 is for one of these to be 0, because anything times by 0 is 0. If we think of 100 times 0, it's 0. So it doesn't then matter what the other bracket is if one of them is 0. So there's going to be 2 options. It could be when x plus 5 equals 0. Or it could be when x plus 3 equals 0. So we've just put those 2 brackets equal to 0. Now, hopefully we know how to rearrange this. If not, check the other videos from the other post. But to rearrange, we move this onto the other side and we change that sign. So it becomes a minus 5. And that one becomes a minus 3. So just like with the other one, the first step is going to be to factorise that expression. So again, it's going to go into two brackets, and that's going to equal 0. So we just keep that equals 0 the same. Now at the front of both brackets is going to be x and x. And now we need to find the other two numbers. Well, this time they add to get positive 2, but they times to get minus 24. So therefore, to times to get a minus, one must be positive, but the other must be a negative, because remember, a positive times a negative is a negative. So therefore, hopefully we can see that our numbers are going to have to be 6 and 4. But we just need to decide which one is the positive and which one is the negative. So the easiest way to do this is actually just to try both ones and see which comes out with the right answer. So our two options are when we've got negative 6 plus 4 or plus 6 minus 4. So if we did minus 6 plus 4, we'd get minus 2. If we did positive 6 take away 4, we'd get 2. Therefore, we need to look back up here, and we actually need the positive 2. So it must be this combination, because the other combination gave us minus 2, which we don't want. So it must be plus 6 and minus 4. So now our final step is actually solving it. Remember from previous videos, if you're unsure, have a look back. The way to solve it is to put the two brackets equal to 0. So we either have x plus 6 equals 0, or x minus 4 is equal to 0. Now remember, to get x equals, we move everything away. So we're going to move this plus 6 over, and it becomes a minus. And this one, it is negative 4. So when we move it over, x becomes positive 4. So those are our two options. So again, moving on to grade 7 ones now. So these are a little bit trickier. So to do this one, what we need to do is we need to get rid of this fraction. Now remember, a fraction actually means divide. So just like with the other ones, we need to take that across to the other side. But because this, at the moment it's saying divide by 9, when we take it across, we have to times by 9. So we get 3 times 9, which is 27. And we know that 3x squared equals 27 because we've got rid of that. That was the whole point of doing that times by 9, to get rid of that bottom. Therefore, if 3x squared equals 27, first thing we can do is divide both sides by 3. Therefore, 27 divided by 3 is 9. So therefore, if x squared equals 9, what we then do is square root, and we do this exactly the same to the other side, so we get that x equals 3. Just like with the other one, the very first thing we're going to do is get rid of this divide, this fraction. So remember, at the moment this is saying divide by 2. So in order to move it onto the other side, we do the opposite. So we must times both sides by 2. Therefore, 4 times by 2 is 8, and all that's left on this left-hand side, we've got rid of that. So all that's left is that x cubed equals 8. Now remember, x cubed means x times x times x equals 8. And hopefully, remember, I've said in previous videos, I would remember these, I would learn these. Hopefully we know that that would be that x equals 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. In order to solve this, the first thing we're going to do is get all of our y's on the same side. So it's going to be easier to move the smaller one, so we move that over. Remember, at the moment this is a plus y squared, so when we move it across, it becomes a minus. So we've got 4y squared minus the y squared. All that's left on that side now is the 14, and that 2 just comes down. So then, in order to get rid of that plus 2, remember when we move it across, it becomes a minus. So we now have 14 take away 2, which is 12, and we can make this a little nicer. Remember, there's an imaginary 1 in front of there. So it's now 4y squared, take away 1y squared, which leaves us 3y squared. Therefore, if we know what 3y squared is, we can find what 1y squared is by dividing by 3. And if we do 12 divided by 3, we get 4. And therefore, we can square root both sides to get what y equals. If we square root that, we get that y equals 2.